Welcome to the Higher Ed Geek Podcast, where we explore the impact of EdTech on the student experience with engaging, fun, and relevant conversations that honor the wide range of work happening all across the higher ed ecosystem. I'm your host, Dustin Ramsdell. I've been working in and around higher ed for the past decade, focused on student support and digital experience. Join me every week for discussions with some of the best minds in education technology who will be bringing you their perspectives on how digital transformation is reshaping the way we recruit, engage, and graduate learners. You'll hear firsthand accounts of how institutional leaders are developing their strategy, as well as get deeper on the stories of how these EdTech tools are being built to foster better student outcomes. With that, let's get to today's episode. Really excited for this conversation. You know, we're having you on, Stephen, as kind of the recently minted head of Panopto. Excited to have you on and talk about kind of your role and the work that you're doing now. You've got an amazing background in ed tech and everything. So always great to have folks like you on that are starting to kind of enact a vision in a new role, but also can kind of look back on a lot of great experience that you have in this space. So we'll start as we always do. If you just kind of want to briefly introduce yourself, what brought you to your current role and organization and kind of the work that Panopto does in this space briefly.
Sure, thank you. And it's really a pleasure to be here with you today, Dustin. So thanks a bunch. Stephen Laster, I'm the CEO of Panopto. We'll talk more about what Panopto does, but we are a market leader in visual and auditory learning, and we can go into that in more detail. I have been in educational technology for about 25 years at this point. Flew by quickly. Entered this way back around 2000. I was lucky to be a trustee of Babson College. And if you think back to the '01 time period, there's this seminal report that said if small colleges weren't going online, they'd be out of business in 3 years. The report is a little bit ahead of its time, but Babson, being very entrepreneurial, took that seriously and invited me back to help create one of the country's first blended online MBA programs. And that really launched my career in education, innovation in higher ed, and in ed tech in general. I've gone on since then to work at Harvard Business School, McGraw-Hill Education, Penn Foster, Ellucian, D2L, and I'm thrilled to be part of the Panopto team today. My draw to educational technology, and particularly to what Panopto does, is I am very, very dyslexic, as are my children. And the ability to use technology to help enable my learning and other people's learning is really near and dear to my heart. And what drives the Panopto team every day. And hopefully we're making an impact.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I mean, I know of you all and kind of the, great work that you do. And I appreciate you sharing kind of more about your story and just that idea of like the digital ecosystem and all the infrastructure that goes into making sure that every student has a high quality learning experience. And obviously that's going to look different for every single student and everything of what they want and need and all those sort of things. But like, any reflections or lessons that you can share for this moment from kind of your incredible career across education? Because I feel like, it's a turbulent time, it's an ambiguous time, there's a lot of change and all those sort of things, but also like having that kind of longer viewpoint, I think it's always helpful. Certainly as like a history major, I kind of, take solace in that sort of thing. So yeah, just any reflections or lessons that you could share for this moment for folks listening.
This moment in time is different, but not different. And let me unpack that. It's funny. I was just reading, I think in the Boston Globe this morning, MCAS scores for Massachusetts are still lagging pre-pandemic levels, right? And MCAS is Massachusetts K-12, summative exam. So we have in our K-12 and higher ed systems a generation of learners who have learning loss. We have a moment in global society where the nature of work is changing because of AI. Globally, we have a lot of political change, unrest, and discourse happening. To me, all of that adds up to the imperative, as you said, to create high-quality educational access for as many people as we possibly can. It's through an educated populace that we move society forward. Education, to me, is inherently a human endeavor. I think most of us have been inspired by mentors, by key faculty, by key educators who have really helped us become the people that we are. But this idea that can only happen in proximity in the same room just doesn't scale. And so, why I firmly believe in well-applied educational technology, where the pedagogy and the learning lives in the foreground and the technology fades into the background, where it enables us to, provide experiences at scale, I think it's critical at this moment in time. We've been through these changes before. I remember when, online learning was about shipping CDs, and before that, VHSs, very early part of my career. I remember when we struggled with bandwidth. And now, of course, we have the opportunity with both machine learning and AI to really reimagine what pedagogy means. And I think that's the key. In every technological innovation, it needs to be pedagogy first and technology enabling pedagogy, and pedagogy influenced by what technology can do in service of what is, as I said before, innately human and social endeavor, which is learning.
I appreciate the way that you kind of frame that because I think, yeah, it makes me just think of sort of the like kind of symbiotic kind of relationship of the way that we're teaching and what we're teaching and all those sort of things. But yeah, I think it's just this kind of confluence of factors now of kind of what I observe of like higher education kind of rested on its laurels for a while of just sort of like, well, we've built it, students will come and like we'll always be here because we've been here. And then that idea of like we have just increasingly gathered all these amazing tools to create better learning experiences, expand access to them, and measure things and all of that. So I think it's kind of these like combining factors where it is like this perfect storm allowing us to sort of meet this moment with the right tools. And you mentioned AI certainly in the mix here. Can you just talk a bit more about kind of like what you were getting to there, of that idea of good technology gets out of the way, how you're seeing institutions like applying AI in particular to enhance and not like erode the role of educators?
Yeah, I'll get to AI in a second, but it's a layer cake of goodness. So I think all of us, both in the provider side and in the institution side, owe a debt of gratitude to One EdTech, former IMS Global. And I say that because without interoperability standards, EdTech couldn't get out of the way. The ability to federate a user's experience across many providers seamlessly is, I think, what's helped us drive a lot of the innovation that we have. So that's at the very core. Number one, that student, prototype student, it's Sunday night, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, they're just sitting down to get ready. The technology just has to work, and the experience has to be seamless. The minute that's not true, they get lost, and the stress level goes up, and the ability to not complete goes up. So that's entry into the game. And I am proud of Panopto and all of us in the EdTech ecosystem who see it as just that, as an ecosystem. Super important. So that's sort of point one. Point two, as with any technological innovation, and Dustin, you said it really well, it's not about what generative AI can do for the sake of using generative AI. It's what in the life of the educator and the student can generative AI help make more engaging, more time efficient, more effective. By way of example, at Panopto, we're using it to create summaries, to transcribe, to, through Eli, take what is a flat PowerPoint and bring it to life as an engaging learning moment with an avatar-driven video with checks for knowledge. Now, we don't do that for the sake of AI being able to do that. We do that because we know there's a lot of faculty out there with a lot of brilliant ideas that frankly don't have the opportunity or don't have the inclination to be in front of the camera. And they shouldn't have to be. But we also know their students want to ingest that knowledge in ways that are more engaging and more immersive. And frankly, AI lets them do that at scale. And so it's the purposeful application of the technology to enhance the pedagogy, to make the learning moment easier to consume, and to provide feedback to educator and learner to make highest and best use of the time, whether it's in the classroom, or whether it's outside, whether it's alone, or whether it's in groups.
That idea of kind of what you're getting at of like, you think of that experience of an educator where they might have kind of ideas about like, oh, I want to do this or that, the other, and like, their imagination might be kind of big and kind of active, whatever else, but then they're just limited by any number of factors where it's like, I don't feel super comfortable or confident like getting in front of the camera, or like I just don't have time or whatever else, or the know-how, or any of those other things that like AI and other, just generally ed tech tools, that idea that they can enhance the educator in that way where like they are really trying to pursue ways to kind of innovate, iterate their learning experience for their students, but they just might be limited by, any number of factors or kind of combination of those factors. So I think that idea where it feels very cheesy or so whatever else, but just sort of like, yeah, like AI or these tools could like enable the imagination of educators to like, create these experiences for students, feel novel and feel, more dynamic and all those sort of things. So AI, ed tech, and, in this moment that we're at, we're helping to just sort of enable their potential and their imagination, that sort of thing. Like, I don't know how that sort of hits with you.
No, I think that's spot on. And to build on that, in agreement with that, obviously Panopto is not large enough to invent generative AI, but we are steeped in the practice of education and technology so that we can take those ideas and make them super easy to use. And that's the key, right? So very few faculty get into education to become technologists. Some do, but most don't. But what they want to do is be relevant. They want to be impactful. They want to reach their students. And like all of us, they have time pressures. So again, that drives us every day at Panopto to make it easy to use, time efficient, but take the best of what technology has to offer and bring it into the teaching experience. And I think there are many ed tech companies that do exactly that as well. And I think that's what distinguishes an ed tech company from just a technology company, right? Teaching and learning have a language. They have, to put it in software speak, certain workflows that are sacred. For example, grading and feedback is far more sacred in teaching and learning than it is in retail e-commerce, which is where I started my career in the 90s. Way back when, if you went to a clothing website and that website gave you the wrong recommendation, worst case is you didn't buy it. If I give you the incorrect feedback in the learning moment, I derail you. The stakes are very different. We recognize that at Panopto. We recognize that as an ed tech community. And so again, it's this sacred moment of, to learn, you have to be uncomfortable and stretch, but you also have to have guardrails to succeed. And it's walking through that path of learning that I think is what's most exciting for the team here.
All right, let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor. Forsyth Technical Community College was juggling siloed systems, fragmented data pipelines, and manual workflows across marketing, admissions, and CRM operations. Then they deployed Bolt Agents, Element 451's AI workforce platform. The result? These agents handled over 80% of student inquiries independently, saving 183,060 human minutes, and cutting call volumes by 14% within just 1 week of rollout. Curious what your AI teammates could look like? Try an agent today at element451.com/agents. I think what we've seen start to thankfully kind of like, get kind of chipped away is that like you make this like incredible, amazing, like, game-changing platform and ed tech tool, but it's sort of like just this lone pillar. And that idea of like the interoperability being, I think, just pervasive and kind of expanding, and just like that has just culturally, I think, become much more of kind of the norm. And I love, having folks on and just uplifting those examples of like, yeah, like we had all these tools that worked great together. Here's what we were able to achieve, because I think it's like all well and good if you have like the most powerhouse kind of platform and tool, implemented in your institution. It's obviously just going to be so limited in what it can do if it's not playing nice with everything else that you have in your tech stack. So I think it's a good point to make. And I think just even kind of the dynamics of what this kind of looks or feels like of like when you're doing it right, when you have the right tools that are easy to use and kind of using them to really just enable their vision for their learning experience for their students and those sort of things. And I know too, even just to reinforce that one point you're making of like the sort of stakes of doing this wrong, is that a professor was saying like, oh, don't use generative AI. And then it like kind of was seeming like the professor was using generative AI to give feedback to the students. It obviously raised like huge red flags of the students, and they were, kind of sharing it out and like, oh my God, like one, the hypocrisy, but two, just being, that is not where to do this, like to use these kind of tools and platforms, whatever else.
Can I tell you a personal analog about that? And I agree with you. True story. So I arrived at Bowdoin College in 1983, very dyslexic. I was really lucky. My father, for whatever reason, bought the family an Apple II when they first came out. I took to that like a fish takes to water. I took the word processor that shipped with the computer, and I created my first rudimentary spell checker. Cool thing about dyslexics is we spell incorrectly the same way every time, or I do anyway. So it was a pretty easy spell checker. If you saw it spelled this way in the document, replace it this way. And I had a list that I kept adding to. My parents were very supportive. I took that machine to college with me, and I started writing one of my first papers on that machine with my dot matrix printer. I was one of the first kids at Bowdoin, I think, to bring a computer to school with them. Most faculty were fine. I had one professor who said, I won't accept your dot matrix printout. And I said, why? And they said, well, if it doesn't come from your brain through your hand to the pen to the blue book, it can't be your original thought. So for that professor, I would print everything out, and then I would painfully rewrite it. What does that sound like today?
Yeah.
So it's not a question of don't use generative AI in the teaching moment. It's a question of how does pedagogy change? Some of us can remember when spreadsheets first came out, and there were some accounting faculty who were terrified that if their accounting students used spreadsheets, they'd never learn the fundamental accounting equation. So with every technological innovation, there is resistance. We've seen this time and time again. The fun part of innovation is reimagining how we teach and learn to take advantage of it, and not, to your point, not inconsistently fighting it.
Yeah. That's what because I think, generative AI being kind of the most prominent example, but I think it is just sort of pervasive of like sort of existential crises that higher ed goes through every once in a while, like whether it's, Wikipedia or whatever else. It's like different things where it's like, yeah, like you just have to like adapt and be flexible and sort of like, okay, how are we incorporating something new to inform pedagogy? And like, it's just a sort of like symbiotic kind of, ongoing cycle of, understanding kind of the dynamics and how people sort of, the tools they're using, how are they looking up informations, and I think try to find that area where you can kind of be going along with like guardrails versus maybe just being like, well, you just can't use it at all, and it's like totally, banned or whatever else. Like for me, I think the compromise or sort of the acknowledgement of like, okay, well, if this is something that you want or need to use, here's how to do it properly. We're going to sort of, acknowledge that and do some literacy with these different tools and platforms and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's not one size fits all. Like there are times when it's appropriate. There are times when perhaps it's not. It's really about professors' teaching style. It's about, in a macro sense, what's the offer of the program? And then it's about really thoughtfully implementing technologies or not implementing technologies in a way that enhances teaching and learning. And it's a blend, it's a tapestry. Today I see it in my own kids. I have one studying to be a robotics engineer, the other is studying to be a BMW mechanic. What they experience in their programs and the offer of their programs is different, and both are awesome. Sometimes we have these reductionist conversations about ed tech, what's right, what's wrong. It's shades of gray.
What do you think are the ways or sort of just the advice or things that you would give, that you're seeing like institutions like developing or implementing like AI strategy or kind of like just like digital transformation strategy and everything, like just like their tactics, like, the resources they should be leveraging? Because I think that idea is that like many institutions were kind of ahead of the game. Many are also just kind of navigating in the moment now, and all the things that we're kind of mentioning of like building your tech stack interoperability. How are you sort of building AI literacy? And as institutions are trying to navigate this moment, what are ways that they can develop and implement their strategy here?
I've played that role at institutions. So first thing, I do think whether it's elevating your CIO or having a distinct role, you need leadership both in transforming the life of the student and the administration of the institution, and then transforming how education is delivered. So that's point one. Point two, be willing to experiment. Nobody has the specific answer for your institution. Working in shorter cycles with experimentation, I think, it's natural to higher ed. I think it's important in this time. And harvesting those learnings is critical. Three is experiences need to be seamless. Full stop. Otherwise, it's too complex and too much energy moves away from the teaching and learning. And then, I might remind, and we talk about this a lot at Panopto, virtually half to 2/3 of your students prefer visual and auditory learning. That's what the research says. Use that to your advantage. Reach them, engage them. and make it a true learning community. And success will happen.
I think, yeah, all that's really good advice. But I mean, if there's anything that you'd want to kind of call attention to, or, just sort of, I'll give you the final word, however you choose to use it, as we conclude the episode here.
Yeah, I mean, I think picking up on your last question, the institutions that are doing this well, and when I have done transformation well on campus, number one, they create time and space for faculty to design and deliver experiments in teaching and learning. Number two, they support them with resources. So I remember when the LMS first came out, I remember teaching faculty how to use an LMS. That was critical, right, to moving online. Number three, they value experimentation in teaching and learning, and it counts for something. Number four, they involve students in the feedback loop. And then it's purposeful to the mission of the institution. I think when all of that is in place, I think EdTech is transformative. And I think now to reach today's student, well-applied EdTech, well-applied visual and auditory learning is critical to ongoing success. And AI can help make it engaging, efficient, and effective.
Great way to end the episode. Going to wrap it all together here. Ways to connect with you and Panopto in the description for the episode here. Folks want to keep the conversation going, I highly encourage them to do so. Really appreciate you and your time, all that you've shared, and all that you're doing to kind of help bring high quality learning experiences to more people. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode.
Thank you for having me. It's really been a great conversation. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the Higher Ed Geek podcast. This show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to Higher Ed's largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow. So be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit Enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.